Less than 3 years ago, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said there was credible information pointing to the Indian government's involvement in the assassination of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. Less than 2 years ago, the RCMP said that agents of the Indian government were behind extortions targeting members of the Indian diaspora, particularly the Sikh community. Less than 1 year ago, it came out that former NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's wife gave birth with a bunch of armed RCMP officers stationed outside her hospital room because the RCMP had determined that Singh's life was under imminent threat, as Singh was being closely tracked by an agent that Global News reported was, quote, believed to have ties to a transnational criminal gang and allegedly connected to activities directed by the Indian government. Less than 1 week ago, a Sikh activist in Canada was warned of a threat to his life and his family's lives. And that activist said he believes the government of India was involved. Despite everything I just told you, Prime Minister Mark Carney's government has news for Canadians. Apparently, India is no longer linked to violent crimes in Canada. According to a briefing given to journalists ahead of Carney's upcoming trip to India, senior government officials told the press that they are, quote, confident that that activity is not continuing. Well, as long as they say so. But as you can imagine, not everyone's convinced. And it just so happens that the senior government officials said this as Carney is about to head to India on a trade mission where he's seeking to diversify Canada's trade away from the US. Convenient. Among those who aren't buying this is a group called Sikhs for Justice. They've planned a protest for outside the Indian consulate in Vancouver. On top of that, a Liberal MP came out and publicly expressed his concerns, saying, quote, I firmly denounce remarks by a government official downplaying India's transnational repression. They contradict assessments from the NSIA, the RCMP, and CSIS. This matter must be addressed and the individual's conduct and suitability for their role must be reviewed. I wanted to understand a bit more about this, so I reached out to some experts who know a lot more about this than I do. One of those individuals is Supriya Dwivedi. She is a former senior advisor to Trudeau. And when she responded to me, she referenced that RCMP statement from 2024 that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, saying, quote, in October 2024, the RCMP alleged agents of the government of India were involved in the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, as well as a wide-ranging criminal scheme involving organized crime networks that targets the South Asian community, especially the Sikh community, with extortion and other crimes. That a government official would effectively state that the RCMP assessment is no longer valid in a technical briefing without attribution is mind-boggling. The Canadian public deserves to know what is actually going on. I also reached out to extremism expert Amarnath Amarasingham, and he told me, quote, while it is entirely reasonable for Canada to diversify its trade relationships in response to the unpredictability of the current US administration, this cannot come at the expense of core democratic principles. Deepening economic ties with governments such as India and China raises serious human rights concerns, especially because of the ongoing repression and targeting of the diaspora communities in Canada by both countries. It's remarkable how quickly we have forgotten that we accused India of sending a literal hit squad to take out a Sikh activist on our soil. Diaspora communities have been facing these threats for decades, and we're just beginning to think the government had their backs because of the Foreign Interference Commission and similar outreach. And now it seems like we are going backwards again. Trade policy is never value neutral. It signals to our citizens that we are willing to work with illiberal regimes without much thought to their human rights record. It risks undermining long-standing commitments to human rights, the rule of law, and the protection of diaspora communities. These communities are Canadian too, and the government should act like it. I think that about sums it up. What do you think of all this?